Alrighty. So I think today we're gonna try and take out Sir Alone. The issue, I think, is that my agility can be higher.
Still do you?
Well, holy crap. So... if I go to 40, I can get my agility to 110. But that is quite the commitment. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a damn minute. So... I see. If I were to actually not go Faith at all, I'm only losing 10 points of damage on my weapon, which actually isn't bad. Because the way I'm looking at it is we're looking to get maximal iframes, you know? We're trying not to be an easy target. And I think doing it this way is actually superior.
Now, go along on a journey.
Is this? It's still doing good damage. Although, honestly, I should just spend the remaining souls I have. There's a bigger picture to what I'm saying. You know, a person could say that I sound like a reasonable person. I'm a reasonable person when I'm not dealing with unreasonable people. But the thing is, I've found that being around dumb people actually worsens my mental health a great deal.
You need armor?
And some people could say that this is a cop-out, you know, for me to act how I want instead of how other people want me to act. And my response to that would be something like this.
Thanks for the purchase. Looking for art? I don't... Home. Are
Personally,
you sure? Well,
I, as a person, want nothing more than to be free to be who I am without other people telling me how I should or should not be. And what I despise most is when people decide that they're going to try to tell me what is an acceptable opinion and what is an unacceptable opinion, and so on and so forth. And a person might say, well, you know, some opinions are bad opinions. Like, for instance,
thanks for the purchase.
it's like the opinions of Nazism are bad opinions, or the opinions of the KKK are bad opinions. And I'd be inclined to agree. But at the same time, like, what I'm getting at here is that it's not always that simple. I do like the Throne Watcher armor. That could be cool to wear. There's a bigger point at what I'm getting at here. I would be inclined to agree that those particular opinions are indeed bad opinions. But then a person could then subjectively say, well, what's a good opinion and what's a bad opinion? And they could start trying to rake me over the coals
Thanks for
on
the purchase.
that.
Do come again.
And my response would be that opinions are largely subjective. And what your opinion on somebody else's opinion is also likewise subjective. Now, a person could tell me that, you know, by saying these things are subjective, I'm relinquishing my ability to judge, because who are you to judge? That's just your subjective opinion. I know a lot of the times what happens is people will go, it's just your subjective moral preference, right? The Christians love to do that. They love to say, that's just your subjective moral preference. And then what they'll try to do is they'll try to go, I, on the other hand, have an objective standard of right and wrong, and you don't. They'll try to go that route, right? And, you know, that's really big with, like, the Prager types, the Frank Turek types. They'll try to be like, I've got an objective standard. The problem is that their objective standard that they're quoting is one that permits slavery, genocide, and human trafficking. You know, so, like, if I could argue that I could argue that their position isn't an objective position at all. Their subjective moral preference is a subjective moral preference that permits these things. And since their subjective moral preference permits things that are objectively bad for people, I can then judge their preference based on the standard of objective harm that their beliefs cause. You know, I gotta have different stats for that. I gotta blow my nose too. Hold on a moment. Because in the end, that's the joke, right? If they say that, you know, morality is just an opinion, then I could be like, well, you know, congrats, you know, your morality is just an opinion too, bro. And people could say that this is just moral relativism, and, you know, I'd be inclined to agree it is moral relativism, you know? And people could say that moral relativism is a bad thing, but I would argue that it's a logical conclusion when you come to the conclusion that morality is largely subjective. And some people could say that, you know, if we determine that morality is subjective, who are you to tell someone that they have a bad moral system, or that they've reached a moral judgment that is abhorrent? And you could say, well, I've reached the opinion that your moral standard is abhorrent through my moral opinion, through my moral framework. And they could say, you know, because it gets to a point where it's circular, because then they go, well, that's just your opinion, bro. But the problem with that's just your opinion, bro, is that that's just your opinion, bro, can be used to refute the person who's saying that's just your opinion, bro. And then at the end of the day, what you have is just a bunch of people saying that's just your opinion, bro. And then at that point, nobody really has any sort of legitimacy at all. And they could just say, yeah, well, that's what moral relativism devolves to. But the problem is that, like, their objective moral standard that they would use devolves to Benjamin Netanyahu calling Palestinians Amalek, whilst arguing that, you know, or other various officials going and arguing that they're human animals and all this other shit. Where the Benjamin Netanyahu, Dennis Prager, William Lane Craig, Frank Turek objective morality leads to is 20,000 dead kids in Gaza, and it's also the exact same moral framework that led to the Holocaust during Nazi Germany and the pogroms that happened in various places in Europe, from like Russia to other European countries. My point is that when you use that sort of an objective moral standard, and I say that in air quotes, the end result is tyranny, genocide, slavery, and oppression. They'll try to act like they're the rational actors and they're the adult in the room, but they are not the adult in the room, and they are not rational actors. That's my point on all that. But my bigger point is that all of this stuff, for me, having to deal with it in, say, like a workplace or something, it's absolutely fucking maddening to have to try to deal with this stuff. And I say that it's absolutely maddening because you're then forced to try to reason with a person who is incapable of reason. And that, I am beginning to learn, is a futile effort. Jesus. That's brutal. They have poise, you know? And poise sucks. See, like, the thing with Alone Knights is you gotta be quick with them. You know, you gotta be proactive in offense against Alone Knights, or you're gonna get fucking murdered. Bigger point that I'm getting at is that at the end of the day, the moral standard these people propose is not a good moral standard. It's not a moral standard that helps the world or anybody. It helps them, it doesn't help you. Even if you're like in the same like ideology as these people, guess who's gonna bear the sacrifice when they decide that they're gonna start a war? You. You are. Not them. You. If you're a Christian nationalist, guess who they want to die in their wars? You. You're the one who is going to give them everything that they've ever wanted or hoped for. And you're going to do it with your blood, your sweat, your tears, and your sacrifice. They're not going to sacrifice jack shit. Not that I think that Christian nationalists are watching a Dark Souls stream, but that is the end goal. You know, the end goal is for them to get their Armageddon, for them to get their end times party, you know. A lot of dying has to happen. And at the end of the day, you're the person who's going to do the dying. Not that I think any Christian nationalist would want to watch this. It's Dark Souls, you know? This game is like, it's much of a heathen game as possible, you know? This game represents everything they fucking hate. But I still don't think that it changes the simple and unfortunate fact that I'm right. At the end of the day, you know, the idea of Christians ruling everything might sound good to a Christian. Well, it might be good for a Christian until, like, we start deciding who's a real Christian and who's not. It might be a good idea until you're expected to follow all of the parts of the Bible that the religious leader you're under wants you to follow. But at the same time, you shouldn't follow the parts that he doesn't want you to follow. Because at that point, you're just dealing with a fucking cult. And the problem, ultimately, that I find when we look at Christianity as a whole is that once it takes power, it's not just the atheists, and it's not just the Jews that bear the brunt. It's not just the gays either. Eventually, that very framework that they've said will bring you joy, that they've said will bring you everything you've ever wanted, that says will bring you your Christian society where you can go out on the street without locking your door, or without worrying about some horrible non-white defiling your perfect white child. That whole narrative, it quickly blows up. Because eventually what happens is it turns into other Christians doing bad things to your kids. It turns into other Christians deciding whether you have rights or not. And at the end of the day, like, you shouldn't ever want that. Because it's all fun and games until they start deciding that they need to do like the Spanish Inquisition in America, and you're next because you're some sort of a heretic or something. Anybody can be a heretic. You know, like the KKK shows, that it's not just like... It sucks. It sucks a lot. So this is the this place is nasty because there's a giant run back. If you die here, you gotta start all the way up. God damn. These fuckers have bows. They don't fuck around. My point is that the idea of a Christian nation for Christians is all fucking fun and games until they decided that you don't have the right to vote because you're not the right kind of Christian. It's all fun and games until Christians start adopting very cold, very hostile views on who gets to have kids and who doesn't. Because even though they try to blame that on the secularists, at the end of the day, most of the Nazis were Christians, you know? And they're the ones who decided that eugenics was a good idea. It wasn't like it was a bunch of atheists who decided that, you know? Like, it was a Christian society that arrived at that conclusion. That right there, I suppose, is the big issue. It might be the Hispanic people and the gays and atheists today could be it tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow they'll decide that MAGA are useless eaters, social unproductives, useful idiots whose usefulness is past. And then what then? A person could ask me, what is it that I would do to fix things? What I would do is I would turn the country into a pure meritocracy. I have 110. Anyways, I've learned a problem with this area. The problem is simple. My weapon is going to break by the time I get to the boss. There's even more trouble yet. Since my weapons are going to break before I get to the boss, and I'm going to run out of repair powder if I just use one weapon, I must use two weapons. I've determined that bleed on the Chaos Blade is not very effective. So instead of having a bleed Chaos Blade, I'm going to change things up. Bingo. I understand the joke with this weapon. If you just remove everything, it only does 250. Which is why you want to just give it dark or bleed. But if you dark infuse it, it's really the way. Because if you look at this now, I get over 300 damage. So, anyways, the way I'm going to go through this next area is since I have to not die to the knights. I'm going to change my equipment around just a little bit. So instead of the Ring of Steel protection, we're going to get ourselves the Southern Ritual Band. That way we got the Chloranthy Ring, and this, we're going to get the Ring of Blades. Although, honestly, before I fight this dude, I should just go to Drain Lake and kill the pursuers in the foyer. Also one more one more ring that I want here. I want oh shit, I'm running out of rings. Let's just test something out. This does 350. Does still a little more damage too. To attune my spell, so that's not really helpful. Yeah, I'm pretty collected playing games like Dark Souls 2, first-person shooters. Until I start dealing with people. I'm like verbal interactions. I can deal with some types of people, but not all. It's ironically the cost of being an outcast. Gets to a point where you are only compatible
Welcome, August. Tell me,
with certain types of people.
gone so soon? Be safe on you.
There's supposed to be 2 pursuers in here. Maybe I gotta use a bonfire aesthetic. If I do, the enemies in that room are gonna be nasty. Absolutely nasty. I get why this weapon is what it is. I never really liked it in my earlier days playing the game, because I didn't like the life drain on it, but I didn't realize that what this weapon does is it provides you more damage than you're going to get out of the gate than the vast majority of katanas. As far as these textures go on the walls, there's there's not a lot of roughness there. It's really slick. Besides, I've realized something I gotta do. A few things, actually. I realized another dumb thing that I forgot something. One thing a lot of people don't realize with textures is a lot of the times the textures appear to have depth when they don't. It's actually kind of funny. Ah, there it is. The Moonlit Butterfly armor.
Are you sure? you sure?
I completely forgot that you have to be on New Game Plus.
Looking... Thanks for the purchase.
Moonlit butterfly armor. Besides, there's one more thing I can do in Majula. I can kill the sorceress. She's the betrayer. I could go without the agape ring for a bit if I wanted. I forgot that I could do this too. I could get the bow for it. I got all sorts of shit that I want to get on this character. This character's gonna be so fucking high level. I could use these.
Are you sure? Looking... Thanks for the purchase. Do come...
I don't know if I can do another bonfire setting just out of the gate here. If I can, I'm going to.
You need a... Thanks for the purchase.
There's method to the madness. May not be considered bright what I'm trying to do. I've got an idea. It's a build I've used in the past. And ironically, it'll work perfectly with this.
I'll be around.
I remember the first time playing through this game, the idea of upgrading weapons. It was like a moment of holy actual shit. And what I mean by that is you realize how many weapons there are in this game. And it boggles the mind.
I'll be around.
So, the thing is, the Manslayer is a fucking monster. Because, if you look at this thing, it scales A off of Dex, and it inflicts 100 poison. Now, if I wanted to be a weirdo, I would go to Mick Doofus's workshop and see if I can get this thing a poison infusion, because a poison infused Manslayer with my current stats should be able to instant proc poison on anything that I touch.
I fled.
You could get bleed on it, but... And if I were to do that, I would only lose 30 hit points of damage. But if you look at this, I'd get 143 poison. And if I did that, I lose 10 points of damage. That's it. In this case, you lose close to 20, but you get bleed and poison. I might try that sometime, but for now, we're gonna go with a poison-infused manslayer. Because that, consider... Plus, oh, that's dirty, because if you look, it gets an additional 128 poison. Now, this isn't really useful against, say, the Alone Knights. But there are a lot of enemies that this is useful against. Beginning to realize something that dumb me didn't realize earlier on. Chaos Blade is actually really nice as long as you use it with some form of HP restore like warmth. I say this because the damage on it is actually better than the Berserker. which in the past has been my weapon of choice. And I suppose it still is my weapon of choice if I'm doing a low-level build. Bigger picture, right? So what am I trying to get at? So, this is what I'm getting at in life, you know? A person could tell me that if I can play Dark Souls to great efficiency, I'd make a wonderful world. That's not really true. I'll tell you why. I'm fine in environments where I'm able to just work through a problem at my own pace, without somebody micromanaging me or constantly looking for somebody to blame for their failures. But once I start having to deal with people who are dumb and who are pathological fuck-ups and who cannot and I'm constantly cleaning up their retard messes, I stop being a reasonable guy, and I kind of get a little unhinged. It's like the scene in the Hitler movie. Basically, Hitler's yelling at everybody because of a failed invasion or something. You know, it gets like that. People could say that that's a me problem, and I would counter that the reason I'm like that is because I came from an environment that does not accept failure, and where even the slightest mistake on my part would be blown out of proportion and made into a big deal. My bigger point here is that when I'm in a working environment and other people's mistakes or institutional failures are preventing me from doing my job, but I'm expected to do my job, it puts me in a situation where I'm literally like not mentally stable. And the reason for it, ironically, is because I require logical consistency to function. And when I'm not allowed to do that, because I have to placate someone's ego, placate, I think is the proper pronunciation, you know, I have to placate someone's ego because they're mad, you know, and they're incompetent, and they didn't do themselves a favor and dedicate their life to studying things, and instead decided that they were going to be a masters in business administration, where they think they're good at managing businesses, but the truth of the matter is that they're not good at doing much of fucking anything. You know, it's really annoying. It's really annoying dealing with people who, for instance, will be in charge of a tech company, but they'll know nothing about tech. Now, they could counter by arguing that the pimp doesn't give the blowjobs, but that's not really a compelling argument. You know, for me, the way I see it is if someone's going to be the CEO of a tech company, they should know how tech companies work roughly, so that they can then make the best decisions. And they could say, well, that's what we hire other people for. But then it's like, well, why do we have you? What's your job in all of this? So, well, my job is to provide the capital. You know, so that I can extract the capital. That's how it works. And it's like, okay, but if, you know, like, if your job is just to extract capital, then that just kind of makes it parasite, right? A person could say that it's hypocritical of me, a veteran with a PTSD rating, who doesn't work, to call other people parasites. But this is what I would respond with that. I would respond by arguing that my benefits were catastrophically mismanaged, and the end result of that was me being driven into debt that I shouldn't have. They might say that I was living it high off of the hog. I would counter that I was living. And I would further counter that the investments I made were mostly in technology, so that I could get better at learning technology. They could say, ah, yes, but here you are playing Dark Souls 2 when you could be learning something. I mean, sure, I could be learning something, but the fact of the matter is I've been learning things all day, and I also ran errands today, you know? For me, what I do in my spare time is I learn things, right? That's what I do. And so for me, the way I see it is, if somebody wanted to say that I'm lazy, I would counter by saying, like, no, I'm not lazy. I actually spend my time learning things and trying to better myself when I'm not unwinding and playing games. It's what I do. Either that or I'm having discussions about objective reality with people who aren't really at all concerned about it. This guy, if you attack, he punishes you. So instead, you'd have to punish him. Absolutely rough. This guy, he's the best. I mean, like, the irony with a person like me is that the way that I relax is I play hard video games. Yeah. Now I could ask myself, why am I so fucking effigy against Sir alone? That's a dumb move. Why are you using an effigy when you're just gonna die? Sometimes we're dumb. I just don't like looking ugly and dead. You know, a person could say, you know, oh, you could work. Well, it's like this, you know. At the end of the day, the work I'm doing is completely menial in labor in nature, and it doesn't pay enough for me to pay off my debts in a reasonable amount of time. Then that's just going to exacerbate my existing PTSD symptoms. That's my point. Person could say, you know, oh, but you could do it. It's like, yeah, I could do it, but it would just make me certifiably insane. Fucking Luigi Mangione. You know? They could say that makes me a horrible guy. I would argue that I just don't like being a slave to lesser people. You know, I want to make video games. I want to do something with my life that actually is worth a shit. Instead of, like, slaving away for a company that doesn't give a shit about me or if I live or if I die. People like me, what we need autonomy. We need to not be bothered by the concerns of other people. At the end of the day, people trigger my PTSD. These games suck. idea of the VA and all that shit goes. The way I see it is I'm going to be depressed for as long as I have student loan debt that I shouldn't have, you know, the VA were to decide not to next. It's got the issue. You want me to stop being depressed? I can forgive my student loans and fuck right off. So anyways, the joke that I get with this weapon is that you're paying the extra health to confirm eliminations. Like when I was a systems administrator, for instance, like there was never any time to just work through a problem at a leisurely pace. Everything was just, everything must be fixed now. Now. All the time. I want it now. Day in, day out, 24/7. Goes a more reasonable pace. But you were constantly expected to move at the pace of the crowd without any crack. I fucked up really bad. I think bigger picture with this weapon, if you included the red tear stone ring, you could probably make it even better. I think if you mix the red and the blue tear stone ring, you might even get a better result because you'd be able to do more damage, and then at low HP, you get that extra bit of damage negation. I suppose there is an upshot with this area. Eventually, after you clear all the dudes, you just... think I might have it. Basically, I don't like people. Not all people. I find that the vast majority of people are unlikable in some way, shape, or form. Being around them causes me great psychological distress. is I'm using the Berserker Blade to clear these guys when I should be using the Chaos Blade. I say that because the Chaos Blade, it's got better range, it's got better reach, and if I'm fighting alone knights, I can afford to take the health up front. See how much smoother this goes. Oh, I've got an effigy going into. Here we are. So here's my crazy. It's so crazy, I don't even know. We're gonna do clear the first floor, and then we're gonna take the NPCs in afterwards, because I think the NPCs are gonna be helpful. The other thing that this thing has. Now, a person could ask how my condition relates to my military condition, and why is it that I can't work due to my military condition? Well, I would explain that. It's very simple. I have PTSD, and a component of that PTSD is an intense dislike of other people. Plain and simple. People are a trigger. Chaos Blade will do better damage. As a consequence, give me a chance. is a little bit of a challenge. There. Got the last smelter wedge. That guy is not the fun guy. Since I killed Sir alone, I might just end up ending the stream here for the sake of watchability. See what's in there. Yeah, my bigger point is, for me, it's like this. I don't dislike all Christians, but I don't like being around them. And you could say that that sounds like a bigoted thing to say, but my counter to that would be that as an atheist, it's common for me to have to deal with Christians who like to talk about how much they wish they could do horrible things to atheists and LGBTQ. And having to listen to them go on about how much they want to fucking murder us. Or listening to their opinions that are adjacent to that. It's enough to make a person absolutely despise an entire class of people. Because even though they might not come out and say it, they might say things like, I'm a Bible-believing Christian and I believe everything the Bible says, even the things about gay marriage or gay rights. You know, they could pull a real Charlie Kirk there. And, you know, that's basically like saying, like, I don't believe that you should be killed for being a gay person, but I do believe everything the Bible says, including the parts about how we should treat gay people. It's sort of like a Nazi reading Mein Kampf and going like, I'm not saying we should enact the final solution, but I am saying that I agree with Hitler's conclusion on the Jewish solution. That's what it's like. Well, on the Jewish question. And I'm not a Nazi, and I'm against everything that the Nazis stood for. I'm against racial hierarchy. I am against persecuting people because they're Jewish. You know, but at the same time, what I'm also against is I'm against religious dogma. And I'm against, essentially, the hierarchies that these religions create. Now, some might try to argue that I'm a bigot for that, but I would argue that I am no more a bigot than the religious person. who says they believe in the entirety of their religious texts. Every jot and tittle. That person could say that I should be the bigger person. Well, my response to that is that being the bigger person is overrated. When other people hate you, well, hating them back is actually quite cathartic. Turning the other cheek, on the other hand, that's lame and gay. It's no fun. There it is. Soul of Medalia, Bride of Ash. If I remember correctly, I can get a really nice pyromancy off of that. At this point, I should use my point is, well, it's actually really funny, actually. Think of it like this. There's a difference between an atheist like myself, who served in the military around a bunch of Christian nationalists who fucking hated me, and a Christian, not a Christian, an atheist, who goes to school at Oxford and has these academic debates with Christians. And their whole focus is on, you know, do you believe that there's free will or not? You know? I argue that the atheists who would consider themselves more intellectual and more civilized, in air quotes, are ones who have been raised in a sheltered environment where they never really had to deal with the hatred as much firsthand. I'm sure they've dealt with some of it. I don't think they've ever been truly mired in it. You know, they haven't truly been down in it, as I would say. Which is a reference to a 9 Inch Nails song. Point being, when you're down in it, it's different. When you're actually having to deal with other people legitimately hating you for whatever reason, it's a whole lot different. What's my point? When you deal with visceral hatred firsthand, it's the sort of thing that changes your mind on things.
Very prepared.
I think there's some stuff I can get from this guy I can't get. I know there's some stuff that I can get from this guy.
Is that very?
But I'm trying to figure out. There it is. Outcry. That spell is actually really good. Maybe maybe I should get a flame weapon too. Get outcry, I can get a flame weapon. Those are good spells to have. But outcry fucking slaps.
Well, there is fire.
Gotta test something else out.
Feel courage.
Now I can talk. It's like my name is trying to push up. Fuck you. Here's 10,000 spiders and 2 pickaxe wizards. Spam the piss out of you. I didn't know the chime of screams existed. But it looks pretty fucking cool. That, I think I might try out.
Come again. Do you have?
So, Fume Ultra Greatsword is amazing. That's actually really fucking good too. Right now we're getting the Bewitched Alone Sword. And we're gonna get the Bow of Want. Pardon. See, that's an item that intrigues me.
Come back again.
Not that I'm actually going to... Well, maybe I will get it. I'll get it because I'm really curious. It has low stat requirements.
Come back again.
I mean, look at this thing. It requires 26 faith, though. That's the problem. But if I ever do get an alternate account, I'll be able to trade it this thing. I think it might actually be a superior katana, even though I overlooked it in the past.
I'll be around.
Is there the range on this thing? And it looks cool. Also has innate bleed. There's a little wind up there on the leg. It probably has really nice range. Point is, people could say, like, well, you can obviously work doing a desk job. It's like, doing what? It's work. You know, I fucking hate people. Work manually. And if you wanted to know what will make the depression better, it's being put in a situation where if I'm not improving myself, I will be content. They then say, why don't you work at a grocery store? Oh, friends, below poverty line, make depression worse. Way fucking worse. Say, what if we don't care about you? Fuck you. My version is a consequence of psychological abuse, which is why I have PTSD. At that point, I would tell them to put my trouser snake.
I'll be around if you ring.
I could do more of this.